What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. I'm on a big road trip at the moment, driving all the way from Oregon to Texas. I'm currently in New Mexico, and I've been thinking about a lot of stuff. I just drove like 1,500 plus miles over the last couple days, and one of the things that I've been thinking about is running. Running and just how it impacts my life, all the different seasons of running that I've been through, and the main thing I wanted to talk about with running is just how mental running is, and the mental kind of fortitude that you have to have to race, specifically when we're talking about racing. I came from kind of the background of running track and field in high school, and I did a little bit of it in college, and yeah, to actually race people as fast as you can. I was an 800 meter runner, and I would say it takes a lot of mental strength, but you also develop a lot of mental strength in running. I thought I would share kind of a little story that's kind of been on my mind recently, because I've been on this season. I'm 35 years old, but I'm closer to 40 at this point than I am 30. And yeah, I've been in this just season of just like self-actualization and trying to get my health and my fitness back. I put on a lot of weight over the last couple years. I've actually lost a little bit recently, but the trend over the last 4, 5, 6 years has been putting on weight. So started running quite a bit 2 months ago, getting back into it, and that's kind of made me just think about a lot of different things. With running specifically, like I said, I'll share this story. So back when I was in Army ROTC, I think the Army PT test has changed. I've been out of the Army for a while, but when I was in, all through Army ROTC and when I was in the Army PT test was the same when I was in, which they gave you a 2-mile run, and then you had to do as many push-ups as you can in 2 minutes and as many sit-ups as you can. And I'd come from a background of running, so I was always pretty good at running. And when we did this 2-mile event, whether it was a PT test or sometimes we would do a time trial, where you would basically, kind of like a race, sort of like the PT test, but they would just evaluate you as a time trial. But we would do these a couple times per semester in the Army RTC, and I became, I guess, pretty well known as kind of like the runner, because the gun would go off or whatever, and I would just go out sprinting. I was just confident. I loved to run and didn't really think much of it. I would just go right up front and just never look back. Just nobody really have a chance. I mean, now I'm not trying to brag or anything. I mean, this is Army RTC. This is different than track and field. That's not to say that I could always do that in track and field against a lot of the better track and field athletes. But in the course of Army ROTC, I definitely was pretty fast, and the reason I'm sharing this is that I kind of developed this reputation as someone that you can't beat, which is not true. It might have seemed like it to these people, but I'm just someone that worked hard at running. I was proud of it. I did a lot of running on my own. Other people could have done that. It's not that I'm just some gifted person who has all these talents that people don't have. I just worked really hard at it on my own time, so I became good at running. Other people would be good at other things, whether it's weightlifting or video games or car driving or baseball or all sorts of other things. People can be good at what they put their mind to, so I had put my mind into running. And so when the gun would go off, like I was saying, I would just get out there, and I wouldn't look back, and there wasn't many times where I wasn't in the front. There was one particular day where I showed up. I had like 102 or 103 degree fever. I was definitely in this mindset very much of like, no matter what, if I'm sick, I'm showing up. And so I was really, really badly sick. I showed up for this run, and this other cadet who was a senior cadet to me, his name is Mike Sidman, one of my favorite of all time. Everyone respected him. He was 2 years ahead. He ended up going into the Army Special Forces years later. So just very well respected in the cadet and the Army world. And he was very good at physical fitness. This is a guy who would be in the gym constantly, just pounding the weights. Huge muscles, really strong. He could do like 120 push-ups and he was very impressive at running, especially for his body size, because he had a lot more muscle mass than me, and it's harder to run, even though muscle, is good, for sure. If you're talking about running specifically, it's still going to weigh you down if you have too much of it. He was very impressive at running. He could run like a 12-minute 2-mile, which is, or close to a 12-minute 2-mile, which is really fast for someone of his size. But on a good day, or really most days, he wasn't going to keep up with me, just like I wouldn't keep up with him in the gym. My strength was in my speed. I could run very fast. So back to the story, I show up, even though I'm really, really sick. I'm just like coughing my brains out and just not feeling good. Had a high fever the night before. But I just knew what I was going after, and I just knew that it wasn't within, the Army standard to try to take any days off with what I was trying to do. So I showed up, and I tried to give it my best effort, which I couldn't do what I normally did, which was I run up front as fast as I can. I couldn't do that. I just did the best that I could, which was not as good as I normally do. And what I found is that every single person in the ROTC battalion found themselves in a place where they were just as far behind as me as they normally would have been. And that included Michael Sidman, who was normally the person who was right behind me, maybe 10, 20 steps behind me, because that's just what he felt. And I'm not trying to bash him specifically. I told you I very much respect him. He went into the Army Special Forces. He did a lot of things that take a lot of mental strength. So I'm not trying to take anything away from him, but just in the world of running specifically, it can be hard to get past these mental barriers, and it's not just him. Like I said, he was typically the next fastest guy, but when I was sick, I think people didn't realize how sick I really was. I thought that people knew I was sick, but people just fell in line behind me, including Michael. And we crossed the line. I ended up running a 12-minute 2-mile, which happened to be significantly slower than I normally would have done. But I just did my best, and that's all I had that day when I was sick. And I just remember Michael Sidman coming up to me and saying, Brian, or he would call me Johns, get over here. And he was a senior cadet, so I went over, and I think I had told him I was sick, but I don't know if he really paid much attention to that. And he's like, Brian, I don't get it. Why were we so much slower? Why is my time so much slower? I don't get it. He was like 12 minutes and 20 seconds, and I was 12 minutes. And, I told him, I was like, well, Mike, this is why. It's because I'm sick. And he's like, well, what do you mean? I don't get it. I'm not sick. And I'm like, no, Mike, you don't get what I'm trying to say. Like, I'm sick, and you and everyone else just fell in behind like you normally do. I was like, running is a mental game. So you guys have trained yourselves that I am about this many steps faster. So Michael, you've trained yourself that I'm about 20 paces behind, and that's all you can do. And then, all these other cadets would follow in, and every single person was probably about 1 minute slower on that specific day because I was 1 minute slower on that specific day. So that's all I wanted to share about that. And we're going to do more motivational talks, more about running and different things like that, because running is a big part of my life. So if you got anything out of this short little dialogue about running and my time in the Army ROTC, hit me up with a subscribe, and hopefully I'll catch you on the next one.